Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Overheard Online. This is my second solo episode and something that I will be doing more regularly. It's a chance for me to connect with all of you directly, one-on-one, as we dive into some of the wild glitch stories that I prepare for you week after week. If you're listening on YouTube or on any podcast platform, don't forget to drop a comment, share the episode, or tell me if you've had anything like this happen to you. I love hearing your stories, and they might even end up on a future episode. And if you subscribe or follow, you'll never miss a future episode. And it really helps the show grow, so I would appreciate it if you did. Today, we've got a lineup that goes from strange duplicates and vanishings to voices in empty rooms to visions that make you question who is really running the show. So without further ado, let's dive in. Today, we're going to open with a classic glitch. Imagine going to bed like normal, but when you wake up, everyone around you swears that you were never there at all. That's exactly what happened to the poster of our first story, and it's titled, I Went to Another Dimension, ? And it was shared in r/glitch of the Matrix and is 17 days old. Here's what they wrote. This is the most unexplainable thing that has ever happened to me, and I think about it often. We were not under the influence or anything. It happened when I was about 16, 10 years ago. I lived in a tiny desert town where everyone knew each other. My best friend T was basically like a sister and was very close with my mother. She was at our house that night with my other friend and neighbor S. T spent the night watching a movie in my living room with my mom. S and I went out to the backyard to hang and talk like teenagers typically do. We were out there for maybe 15 or 20 minutes when S decided to walk home because it was getting late. She lived right next door. I went back inside, told my mom and T that I was tired, and I said I was gonna go to bed. I went to sleep, and then I woke up the next morning. When I walked into the living room, my mom and T looked confused and started grilling me, asking where I had been the entire night. I told them the same thing I'm telling you, that I had gone to the backyard with S went home, and I went to bed. They insisted that I hadn't been in my room. They shook out the blankets, looked everywhere for me, went outside calling our names, and even drove around the neighborhood hollering for us. According to them, we were nowhere to be found. They thought that I had snuck out, which of course teenagers do sometimes, but I never snuck out. My mom gave me plenty of freedom, so sneaking out didn't make sense. S confirmed she went straight home and stayed there. I don't know what happened that night. It is the strangest thing that I have ever experienced. That's where OP's story ends, but we have a lot of commenters who chime in with experiences of their own. Our first commenter writes, the same thing happened to me. I was about the same age, maybe 15, back in 1989 or 1990. Friends and I went to an apartment after dark to swim. I took my shoes off and fell asleep on a lounge chair. I woke up in the same chair, my shoes were gone, and my friends were all gone. They swear I wasn't there. They looked everywhere for me. I never knew this happened to other people. Another commenter writes, I think you and S were alien abducted while in your backyard, then returned home to your respective bedrooms the next day. They wiped your memories and replaced them with ones that don't include them. Dolores Cannon uncovered lost memories like that under regression hypnosis. Another commenter chimes in and asks, is it possible that maybe you sleepwalked somewhere? OP responds to them saying, I've considered sleepwalking, but I have never sleepwalked before, not saying it's impossible. My mom and T the next morning said that I had never come back inside and never announced to them that I was going to bed, which I 100% remember doing when I came inside. Another commenter asks, did you remember any dreams? Did you get up in the middle of the night for water or the bathroom? Did Mom and T stay up all night looking for you? Were your slippers, bedding, or glasses out of place? Our OP responded to that saying, I don't recall any dreams from that night or waking up in the middle of the night. I went inside, said I was going to bed, and walked straight to my bedroom. I was fully conscious, then I fell asleep and woke up in the daylight. My mom and T said they drove around town. It's a really small town. And even knocked next door looking for S. S told me the same thing the next day. She walked home and went to sleep. We still don't know what happened. Moving on to our next story, let's flip the script a little. Instead of talking about things disappearing, we're going to talk about things appearing or multiplying. Our next story was posted 4 days ago in r/glitch in the matrix under the title Duplicates Appearing? ? Our OP writes, so I have heard and seen stories like this on the internet, but I have yet to experience it myself until tonight. This may seem like a boring story, but we are legit freaked out, and I would just like to hear if anyone's had similar experiences. Earlier today, my friend picked me up for a day out with our kids. We went out for ice cream and took our kids to the park. I have a Bath & Body Works hand sanitizer attached to my purse. It's the one in one of those holders that attach to a hook type thing. If you're familiar with the little Bath & Body Works sanitizers, you might actually know what I'm talking about. The one I have is lemon scented and it's lotion based to help moisturize. Before we left the park, I shared my sanitizer with my friend and she made a comment about it, saying she had never seen a lotion type of sanitizer before. She really liked the smell of it. We then left the park and packed up the car for her to take us home. I should add that I sat in the back with the kids. She was in the passenger seat and her boyfriend was driving. When she got home after dropping us off, she messaged me saying that my sanitizer must have fallen out of the holder and onto her seat. She sent me a picture of her holding it saying she'll give it back to me. I informed her that she could keep it because I have 4 other refills. I went to my closet to grab a new one, all of which are different scents. I like to buy all different scents when I go shopping for these. I grabbed a new one, walked to my purse, went to replace it, and I noticed that the lemon one that my friend claimed fell out in her car was still there. So of course I told her I still have it, and what she told me next weirded both of us out. She swears no one else in her car would have had it, and it definitely wasn't there before I was. And I swear I only had the one. I didn't bring a second one, and like I said, I always get different scents. And that lemon one was the only lemon one that I had. She even said that the one that she found wasn't new, it was used. We are convinced there was a glitch in a parallel universe or something, and somehow the lemon sanitizer from a different universe glitched and appeared in ours. Has anyone had this happen to them before? Like I said, I've heard stories, but it is so unsettling to have it happen to you. And does it mean anything? Or is it truly just an odd glitch? We can't stop talking about how weird this all feels. Tell us that we aren't alone. So before we get into the comments with this one, this story actually hit home with something that happened to me a couple of days ago that I couldn't explain, and then I stumbled upon the story and naturally had to include it. I have my boating license, and I barely ever use it. I got it about 4 or 5 years ago. I usually keep it in my wallet in the summers, but sometime last year or in the last 2 years, I switched to one of those wallets that attach to the back of your phone. And so my boating license didn't make the cut of one of those 3 cards with me every day. And I put it aside in a separate wallet, and I keep it in the separate wallet locked up in a cabinet with some other old cards that I have so I know where to find them. So this summer, I was looking around for this wallet of all my extra cards, and I recall going in and looking for my boating license and not finding it, and then thinking, oh, I must have taken the card out and put it in my dresser. I check my dresser. The boating license is there. It is in a wallet, a separate wallet that I had in my dresser. Take the boating license, go about my day, take it up north. And when I come back from up north, I throw it back into that wallet that I initially thought it was in. Fast forward to this week, I needed to grab something from that initial wallet that I originally thought that my boating license was in. And I open up the wallet to grab this other card. And as I'm going through the cards, I notice that I have 2 boating licenses in there. And my first instinct is, oh my God, I must have grabbed one of my siblings' licenses. So I pull them out and I check the cards, and it's the same card. Now, I have never lost it. I've never had to order a new one. I don't even know how to order a new one if I ever needed one. I don't know what that process would be. I've definitely never done it before. And yet here I am with 2 licenses. Anyways, I'll keep you guys in the loop if one snaps out of existence. And if not, then I feel very bad for the version of me that now has to go and deal with losing their boating license and hope it doesn't cause them too much of a headache getting it replaced. So moving on to the comments here, it seems that me and OP are not the only people who have been involved in incidents where all of a sudden an item of yours duplicates. Our first commenter writes, I have a friend who is very dumb, so I only half believe him. But I bought his cat a brush so he would start brushing them. He wound up losing it. He eventually bought a replacement and went to go put it away where he usually kept the other one. And the lost one had reappeared right where it was always kept. He said he was pretty freaked out because he obviously had checked there first, before of course looking all over and determining that it had been lost. He thinks it was a glitch. Our second commenter writes, my family and I were at a Renaissance festival a few weeks ago. We stepped into a shop. My husband and son were walking through a few steps ahead of my daughter and I. There was a long table with merchandise that my daughter and I had stopped to look at. 2 other women were looking at the things on the table also. My husband and son kept walking to the other end of the shop. As my daughter and I looked at the items on the table, something clattered to the floor behind and to the right of me. I thought that maybe one of the ladies had dropped something and went to pick it up. It was a pair of sunglasses, and they looked like my husband's. I scooped them up and called out to my husband that he had dropped his sunglasses. My husband turns around and he's wearing his sunglasses. Shocked, I asked the ladies next to me if the sunglasses were theirs. They said no. My husband walks over and examines them. They were almost, but not quite identical to the Oakley glasses that he was wearing. The arm was just slightly thinner. An employee took them outside the shop to see if anyone there had dropped them. No one claimed them, and no one else was around when they fell through. It was as though they dropped out of thin air. It was really unsettling. We joked that my husband in another universe must be mystified as to where his sunglasses disappeared to. I suggested that he try on the sunglasses to see if they were the same prescription as his were, but an employee had already put them away somewhere. OP responded to that comment saying, I have heard other stories of things seemingly dropping out of nowhere. I am not opposed to the idea of different universes overlapping at times. It's a fun idea to explore, but at the same time, it is scary when it happens to you. Another commenter adds to this specific comment thread. I was taking my pills when another pill popped into existence about 4 inches above my lap. I saw it appear. It was a medication that I take, but it wasn't from the ones I was taking at the time. I'm always dropping those particular pills, so maybe it was time that one dropped onto me. And someone else adds, 2 coworkers and myself were waiting to go into work one morning. We were all 3 standing with our hands in our pockets, and a nickel just materialized in thin air and fell in front of us. It just fell flat and hit the ground, didn't roll or bounce or anything. In a new comment thread, somebody writes, This definitely has happened to me. I always pick out fun-shaped sunglasses to wear every summer when I'm gardening. Well, one year I picked out heart-shaped sunglasses. I've never had that shape before, but I figured, why not? Didn't think much of it, was cleaning off my back porch and, while wearing the sunglasses, found the exact same pair under some junk. They were dusty and clearly had been there for some time. Absolutely 100% the same sunglasses. Another commenter chimes in, I just had a similar experience on Friday. For background context, I had a lost earring last year in the summer. I knew where I dropped it at the foot of my bed, and I crawled around on the floor in that area hunting for it. This wasn't just a small earring. It was a long bar shape. I couldn't find it anywhere, just poof, it was gone. Fast forward to November of last year. I arrived home from work and go upstairs to change. I opened the bedroom door, and right in the center of the floor in front of the door is my earring. It was at least 6 feet from where I dropped it, and I walked over that same area every day for months. So for Friday's experience, I arrived home after work not feeling well. I took my jewelry off and dropped a ring on the floor. I knew where it fell. I even felt it under my big toe on the floor when I crawled in bed. I told myself I'd pick it up after I laid down for a bit. I started to feel better and got up later. I knew I needed to find my ring, so I got down on my hands and knees where it should have been. I felt all around the area. I couldn't find it at all. I immediately thought of the earring. I lifted my head, looked at my bedside table, and there was the ring, staring me right in the face. I did not pick it up and put it there. I'm positive that it was on the floor. Then I remembered the bedroom door wasn't closed all the way when I was lying down. As I was in bed, the door started to move and open all the way. No drafts, no other doors opened or closed that could have made the door move. I said hey to whoever opened the door and kept laying there till I felt better. I think whoever brought my earring to me came and picked up my ring too. At least the spirit who haunts me is tidy. And for our final anecdote, and this is definitely an especially creepy one, our commenter writes, I had a Nintendo DS game duplicate. It had the exact same serial code, but weirdly had different saved data. But it still had my name in all of the high scores. I definitely knew it wasn't a case of accidentally buying the game twice, as they were incredibly expensive to buy in the first place, and I knew no one else who owned that particular game. Somebody else asks this commenter, it had the same serial number? Did you remember playing both of the saved states? The commenter responded, I only briefly checked the duplicate. I definitely didn't contribute to any of the saved states and was freaked out by the entire thing. I ended up just giving it to a friend and getting rid of it. Moving on, objects duplicating, that is definitely unsettling. But what happens when the thing that is duplicating or doubling is you? And that brings us to our next story where our poster says that they came face to face with themselves. This story was shared just 2 days ago in r/glitch in the matrix. OP writes, a couple of months ago, I was at my boyfriend's house hanging out, and I took his dog out like I usually do when I'm there. For context, in his backyard, there is a barrier of trees between his yard and the neighbor's yard. I'm watching his dog wander around, and at the tree line, I see a woman. She was standing on my boyfriend's side of the trees, looking down like she was looking at something on the ground. I turned back to the door to tell my boyfriend, who was coming outside shortly after me, but when I looked back, the lady was gone. My boyfriend said that sometimes a neighbor will come into their yard, perhaps to get something that went through the trees or whatever. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. I thought it was strange, but I didn't think anything of it since then. Fast forward to yesterday, I'm hanging out at my boyfriend's house again, and we go outside to walk around the yard. As we're walking, my boyfriend stops to look at something on his phone, and I kept going, walking towards the same spot where I saw that woman. I was looking down at the ground as I was walking, but then I turned to look towards the house, and I see someone at the back basement door. For a second, I figured it was one of his parents, but then I realized I was looking at me. In that moment, I saw myself looking at me and then turning back towards the door. I was seeing myself repeating everything that I had did that day that I had seen that woman. It freaked me out so badly that I had an instant headache and I had to immediately go and take a nap to calm down. Another detail of the story. When I saw myself the first time a couple of months ago, I couldn't make out a face because she had long brown hair that covered it while she was looking down. No one else in the house had long hair except for me, and I had just taken my hair down when we went outside. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I will say that I do sometimes have auditory hallucinations, but I've never had visual ones, and I am on medication for it. It honestly could be a visual hallucination, but to be the same scenario twice, that would be a miraculous coincidence. I don't know what happened, but I know that I saw myself. Has anyone had that happen to them too? I just need to know that I'm not crazy. That post itself is definitely eerie. And before we dive into the comments, I do want to take a minute to note that there are so many stories that we have read or that I have seen of people seeing themselves at a different time and completing a memory. I will tag the stories below, but there is the story that we had where somebody on acid, they had completed their first ever memory when they were in a crib, where somebody had broken into their house and was chased out by their parents, and years and years and years later, when they're on acid, they find themselves hallucinating that they're in a house, and then they realize that they were the person who their younger self had seen that day, and they were the people who allegedly broke into their house. There's also the story that we talked about in Kelsey's episode, the one where the man had chased himself when he was at a farm. He had a memory of a guy on his property with a golden retriever, and he ran away from him. Years later, he was visiting the property with his girlfriend and her golden retriever. Lo and behold, he sees a little boy, starts chasing him. It all clicks all of a sudden that he was chasing himself. There are tons of stories that we have been over that are similar to this one. And if anyone out there has experienced anything quite like this, please drop the story in the comments. And moving along, we will jump into the comments here. Our first commenter writes, I read a book by a guy named Robert Bruce. When he was a young 20-something, he was reading the Encyclopedia about all the other Robert Bruces in history. He looked up and was in the presence of an older version of himself, maybe in his 50s, but he recognized himself. Sure enough, decades go by, and there comes a day where in his 50s, he turns around and there is his younger self, and he lives the same moment from the other point of view. Our second commenter writes, I was in the hospital in early labor with twins. The intent was to keep me pregnant as long as possible, so I was on a couple of different things. My first night there, I woke up to horrible back pain, so they gave me morphine for the pain. Within a few minutes, I could no longer focus and started throwing up. Once that was under control, everyone left the room. Alone in that room, I looked over at the bathroom door, and there stood a mammy with her arms around a white little girl about the age of 12. They were dressed in clothes from the 1800s. The girl had long brown hair. They just stood there staring at me. It took me a while to realize that what I saw was me in a past life looking at me in a future life. I guess it could have been a hallucination from the morphine, but it felt so completely real to me, and I've never forgotten it. That was in 1995. A third commenter writes, something similar happened to me, except I saw the future version of me who was sending me a message. When it all came full circle and it was time to apply the message, I realized the impact and in that moment felt and realized that time is not linear. Nothing is what we think it is. Our last couple of stories have been about things that we see, but this next one is about things that we hear. More specifically, hearing a voice in the house that's clear as day when no one was actually there. This next one was posted about 6 months ago in r/glitch in the matrix under the title, I heard my boyfriend comforting our baby, but he was in another room. OP writes, this happened not 20 minutes ago. I set the baby down in his bassinet in our bedroom, then went down the hall into the living room to talk to my boyfriend. Afterwards, as I was coming back, I heard the baby had woken up and was crying. I had to go to the bathroom, which is right outside the bedroom, and I thought he'd be fine for just a minute. While I was in the bathroom, I heard, clear as day, the sound of my boyfriend's footsteps coming down the hall. I heard the bedroom door open and shut, and I heard his voice saying, hey little, insert baby's name, Daddy's got you, it's okay. And just like that, the baby stopped crying. So I left the bathroom and opened the bedroom door, fully expecting to see my boyfriend holding the baby. Nope, the baby was alone, still in his bassinet, and he had started crying again as soon as my hand touched the doorknob. My first instinct and the most logical explanation is that this was an auditory hallucination, which doesn't make a lot of sense because nothing like this has ever happened to me before. But the one part that makes me overthink is that the baby actually stopped crying and was responding as though he was being comforted. All I know is that the entire situation felt strange and it's been an unnerving experience. Moving on to the comments, our first commenter writes, wait until the baby starts talking and asks you when its other daddy will be coming to play with him again. The one that looks almost like daddy. Somebody had responded to this comment saying, I'd nope out of that house so fast. OP had responded to this thread saying, there actually have been several other strange occurrences here regularly, like electronics turning themselves off and on, pets randomly acting freaked out at nothing, items disappearing and reappearing where everyone swears they didn't put them, but this was on a whole other level. A second commenter cautions, just to be safe, check into symptoms of postpartum psychosis if your baby is less than 6 months old. I experienced it and had never heard of it prior. Reality got extremely distorted. OP responded to that comment saying, no other symptoms of postpartum psychosis, but I know that sleep deprivation can cause hallucinations, so that's definitely a theory. I just can't make sense of how the baby happened to momentarily stop crying in that exact moment, as though it was being comforted. I haven't told my boyfriend about the whole incident yet, because I'm afraid he's going to think I've lost my mind. Our next commenter says, well, I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but there's a difference between ghosts and glitches. OP responds to them saying, I know, but it's the fact that the baby stopped crying as if his dad had picked him up and spoken to him that made me go with the glitch hypothesis. Another commenter writes, something like this has happened to me before, and I had a witness, so I know that I wasn't imagining it. If I didn't have a witness, I would have assumed that I was just hearing stuff. I thought my niece was in the other room. I called out her name, and she said, what? As though I was annoying her. So I walked towards the response while talking to her, and I look on at the couch where I expected her to be, and she wasn't there. My other niece was beside me in the kitchen when I first called out, and I asked her if she had heard it too, and she did. It was so clear and obviously her, so we both searched the house yelling her name. We kind of thought we would find her, but absolutely no one was there. Everyone was outside. She was with another group of kids screwing around in the neighbor's yard. There's no way she could have been inside at the time. When we found her and told her what happened, she thought both of us were nuts. Someone responds to this comment saying, something similar happened to my husband. We had people working on our house on one side and my husband's office where he was on the other side. One worker called out my husband's full name. We'll call him John, for something, and a woman's voice from the living room, in between where they both were, responded saying, "His name is Johnny." My husband does go by his nickname. They both heard it, both my husband and this worker. Wouldn't be an issue, except there was no woman present in the home at the time. The TV was off, no one was in that room. It creeped all of us out and continues to creep us out to this day. Ironically, the previous owner had the same name as my husband, though he and his wife were both alive at the time of the incident. Another commenter chimes in, "We had some weird things happen when our kids were babies. I once heard my wife come in and say hello to the dogs while I was rocking our baby upstairs. After she didn't come upstairs, I went downstairs to find her, but she wasn't there. When I called her, she was still at work. Another time, my wife saw an arm reach into the crib to console our baby while watching the monitor. She was alone in the house at the time. My kids are older now, and these types of things don't happen here anymore, but it was pretty spooky at the time." Our next commenter writes, "I'm not sure how old the baby is or how well you've been sleeping, but boy, oh boy, do I get it. After having my daughter, we had to stay 3 extra days after nearly a 3-day labor, so I didn't sleep more than an hour at a time with all of my feedings. She was in the NICU 3 weeks early due to hypertension. And on top of that, nurses were constantly coming in. The first night she got to stay in her room, I was so thrilled because I could sleep. But then, as I was going to fall asleep, and I'm still 1/3 awake, I hear her crying loudly, clear as day. I got up, but she was asleep. I tried to sleep again, and my husband, who was asleep on the couch next to me, started talking to me, like I was having a conversation with him. I got this weird feeling and realized he was asleep. I woke him up in a panic to tell him that I was hallucinating because at that point I was scared of my own brain. After getting her home, sleep eventually became easier, but that first 6 months almost took me out. Sleep deprivation can cause this. I've read stress can also trigger it. I know how real it sounds. It's so bizarre, and that's really the only time anything like this has ever happened to me." Our next commenter writes, "My ex-boyfriend's house was really haunted. We were having an argument once, and after words were exchanged, we were sitting on the couch in silence, and all of a sudden, we heard a woman singing loud and clear. OP responds to this comment saying, 'That ghost really wanted y'all to make up.' And somebody else chimes into this thread asking, 'What was she singing?' Our commenter here responds, 'I don't know. It sounded like a woman talking, but muffled, but then it faded into humming. My boyfriend's mom used to see this woman a lot. One night she was going to bed. She had just turned the lights off, and she thought she heard her daughter come into the room to sleep with her. She could see her standing at the end of the bed staring at her. She scooted down the bed and stuck her foot out at the end of the bed to nudge her daughter, but there was nothing there. Moving along, sometimes, as we all know who have been watching this series, it's not just the adults who experience glitches, but kids. And sometimes when a kid just happens to know something and insist on it with such unshakable confidence, it really does make you wonder." This next story is titled, "My 3-year-old insisted I'm having a baby," and described her perfectly. It was posted in r/glitch in the matrix and is about 3 years old. Our OP writes, "A few years ago, when my daughter was 3, I decided to go back to school and become a nurse. My husband and I were in no way trying for a baby. I was on birth control and we were extremely careful. I walked into her preschool one day to find the director of the school and her teachers telling me congratulations with big smiles on their faces. I used to work as a preschool teacher there, so a lot of these people were close friends of mine. I asked them what they're congratulating me for, and they told me that my daughter announced to everyone that mommy has a little sister in her tummy. I immediately laughed it off and told them I was sorry to disappoint them, but it just wasn't true. My daughter and I went home and talked about it. I told her, mommy didn't have a baby in her tummy, and she just kept pointing to my belly and saying, 'Yes, you do,' as if I were lying to her. A few days later, I woke up to someone touching my belly. I looked down and my daughter had the bottom of my shirt pulled up with her head resting on my belly while she rubbed it gently and said, "Baby sister, what are you doing hiding in there?" It was really sweet, though she had never expressed any interest in having a sibling prior to this, and we had never discussed it. We had the talk again, and she got upset with me and told me she had seen her before and that she was in there. She then told me that her sister looked different from us, that her sister had blonde hair and blue eyes with little holes in her cheeks, aka dimples. My daughter, husband, and I all have dark hair, chocolate brown eyes, and none of us have any dimples. I talked to her about wanting a sibling and told her that when I finished school, we would try and give her a little brother or sister. Again, she got so frustrated and yelled, "I already have a sister." I was expecting my period to start within the next week like clockwork. It didn't. I took a pregnancy test and just stared at the faint positive result for what felt like forever. I was completely in shock. I was on birth control, so I immediately called my OBGYN and they saw me the next day. It was estimated that I was 4 weeks and 6 days pregnant. Later, I gave birth to a blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl with the sweetest little dimples. This experience has always blown my mind. The comment section on this one are full of parents telling stories of things that have happened with their own children. So without further ado, our first commenter writes, "My oldest son told me one day that when his baby brother got here, he could have all the toys my oldest son didn't want anymore. I found out 2 weeks later that I was pregnant with his little brother." Our next commenter writes, "Before I got pregnant with my daughter, my mom said she had a dream of me sitting in a dark room under a spotlight, and I had a little girl who looked just like me sitting on my lap. A month later, I got pregnant with my daughter, who is pretty much a carbon copy of me. My mom called it her announcement dream." On to the last comment that I pulled from the story. "My 3-year-old daughter tickled my belly in October, and I asked why she was tickling me. She said she isn't tickling me, she's tickling the baby. I didn't have a protruding belly, so I was confused and explained I'm not pregnant. 1 week later, I found out that I was pregnant. We didn't tell her yet and avoided talking about it in front of her, but she kept talking about it. 3 weeks ago, she looked at me and said, 'I want a brother, but I'm getting a sister. It's okay though, I'll love her too.' About a week ago, we found out that we're having a girl. I'm in my 18th week now. I am not a believer in these things, but I have to say the whole thing has been freaking me out a bit." To close, I want to share one more story. It's not a frightening story exactly, but it's oddly reverent. This story was posted about 5 years ago in r/glitch in the Matrix. OP writes, "I experienced a glitch where I saw the simulation that we are in, and someone else experienced it with me. We were all completely sober. Quick preface. I'm currently driving home from my lunch break, so I'm using Siri to talk this out. Hopefully the story makes sense. Back in the summer, we had a huge field trip to Lake Powell. For anyone that's been there, you know it's absolutely beautiful. We were boating through the canyons, going deeper and deeper into the lake. At one point, I thought to myself, damn, this place looks so beautiful. It almost looks fake, like it was designed to look this way by something. Right as I was thinking that, a friend turned around to me and said, 'Dude, it feels like we're in a movie looking at props. Everything here looks really fake.' I turned around immediately, wide-eyed, and said, 'Dude, what the F did you just say?' I was thinking the exact same thing. We were both freaked out, but then it got stranger. We were sitting in the back of the boat, looking at our 10 or so friends standing up while the boat slowly moved through the canyon. As I watched them looking at the scenery, I experienced what you could only describe as an altered state of consciousness. It was like the facade of the human experience dropped away. All of a sudden, my friends looked like gods or angelic beings, just experiencing Earth and enjoying the moment. That same friend then turned to me and said, 'Dude, look at our friends. They're so beautiful, so alive. They look like angels. And I knew in that moment we were both somehow experiencing the exact same thing. The best way to describe it, it felt like we had placed ourselves in a video game and were now enjoying the game that we created. It's hard to describe, but if you've seen Maze Runner, you know how they make you forget everything before you go into the maze, yet you still had an existence before? It felt like that. Reality teased us, pulled us back just ever so slightly, and for a brief moment we saw our friends and Earth for what it truly is or could be. We have an edit from OP. He writes, I once heard a story of a man who experienced something similar where at random times he would tap into the outside reality while sober. He came up with a theory: human consciousness in our brains can act like a needle finding the groove on a vinyl record. Once we tune in specifically and find ourselves in that groove, the music can be played, or in other words, we can start experiencing some fascinating things. I'll have to figure out where I had read this, but supposedly this has happened to a lot of people and happens at random times. Pretty harrowing, as it definitely rings true to me. And that's where this post ends, but the replies have brought in some different perspectives on what OP experienced, so we'll dive into those. Our top comment says, you had a moment of enlightenment. Our second commenter contributes a bit of a humorous approach. He says, hi, yes, I'd like to speak to my angelic creator about why the F they gave me crippling depression. Thank you. And somebody responds to this comment saying, hi, fellow sufferer here. People who came back from the dead said that we plan our lives before we were born, that we are contracted to do certain things. If that's true, I'm cursing myself right now. What the F was I thinking? Quick little plug here from me of Journey of the Souls. I will say it again and again. If you have not read it, you should read it. It is so good. It is a book that is just a case study of Michael Newton's work in past life regression hypnosis, where the whole thing is just full of transcripts of him taking his patients through hypnosis and mapping out what people or souls experience when they're in between lives. Believe he calls the research lives in between lives or life in between lives. But I cannot recommend that book enough. It is such an interesting and insightful read. But moving on to the next comment, somebody chimes in and says, it is my sincere and genuine belief that the place or state of being that you guys slipped into is the actual reality, or meta-reality, if you will. I have been there too for brief moments. To this day, I still get that feeling of intense affection for people, often just a random crowd on a bus. How beautiful each one of us is, and the glory and the beauty of our world here. Somebody responds to this comment saying, I've experienced the meta-reality, and ever since I have been in pursuit of it. Though, when I experienced it, I had a voice narrate my actions for a good 30 minutes. I felt like I was in the Stanley Parable. Everything he said, I tried to do the opposite. In a new comment thread, someone writes, I don't know how to say this without inviting a bunch of downvotes, but I'll try because I would like to offer a possible rational explanation for this experience, especially considering your friend was experiencing the same thing too. Consider for a second that you were traveling on a boat, giving you a relaxing, floating feeling. Then consider that sounds are generally going to be amplified as they echo off the walls around you. Then consider that you are traveling through smooth rock canyons while on water, and that worm-toned diffuse light is going to be reflecting off every single surface from literally every single direction, reducing or completely eliminating almost all shadows. This will make everything look really vibrant and pretty and also fake as hell, especially if you're not used to seeing it or if you haven't studied photography. Put all of that together and it's going to simulate what you would think is a psychedelic experience to some degree. I would imagine you could easily replicate the experience if you went back with the same lighting and weather conditions were present. Just my 2 cents, speaking from experience and being a professional photographer and a graphic artist who has explored psychedelics from time to time. And somebody adds in what this could be called. They note, also Stendhal syndrome, where you are overcome by extreme beauty. In a fresh comment thread, someone writes, DMT is produced in our pineal gland, and when ingested as a drug can have similar effects to OP's experience. It feels as though the veil of reality is lifted. You're filled with an overwhelming feeling of love and connectedness, and people in the world around you just look fake, but somehow more real than the reality you usually experience. In high doses, one can break through to another plane inhabited by strange people speaking an unknown language. Those who break through have said that they were given vast knowledge by these aliens or beings with 100% comprehension, but when they come back, they remember none of it. Maybe for whatever reason, you guys were in some sort of shifting reality and touched that other plane. Regardless of my ramblings here, your experience is remarkable. Someone chimes in response to this comment saying, I don't know, man. My friend smoked some DMT a couple months back. She just found herself in a room full of talking cats. Our next commenter writes, this is literally what happens when under the influence of psychedelics. The veil is temporarily broken. OP asks this commenter, but how does it happen sober? Somebody had responded to this thread saying, moments such as yours where everything is perfect and you get a huge rush of endorphins can create an out-of-body or enlightened moment. Or most commonly, to experience it, you can meditate. And for the last comment I pulled on this story reminds me of one my mom had told me about a spiritual experience she had with a stranger. She was at a restaurant having dinner with people, and there was a really aggressive guy shouting mean things to a woman. Well, out of nowhere, my mom got this instinct to stand up and grab the dude's shoulder. She didn't say anything. The man stopped, and then he started to tear up, and my mom did as well. The man asked, what is happening to me? It was like this flow of empathic, loving energy. She had felt this energy before for a brief moment once when she was meditating, trying to achieve enlightenment. My mom and the stranger discussed the event afterwards and couldn't comprehend what had happened to them. Now, if I read a story like this on the internet, I would instantly call it bullshit. But this was my mom. She's not a bullshitting person. I have always been quite the skeptic, but things like this make me believe there is more to life than living on a rock as a sack of meat. That is all for the comments on this final story and a wrap on the stories for today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, or if any story stuck out to you as something that has happened to you before, or reminds you of a story that you have heard from somebody that you trust, please drop it in the comments or email me. I'd love to hear your stories, and it might show up on a future episode. And to all of you guys who stuck around, thank you for listening and spending this time with me. I'll see you back here soon, and we can continue questioning our reality together and diving deep into these mysterious and jarring stories. See you then.